Hello, everybody. Hi. Welcome back. It feels like it was just last year we were all sitting here together. Just by applause, how many people were here? How many people were here last year by applause? How many people is this your first time to this event? Oh, welcome. I'm so glad you're here because you are in for an incredible evening. We are going to have such a great time tonight, and we're doing it for a great cause. One of the reasons I love this event, and I love a lot of the events I get to do, but it is chock full of women. And that's a good thing because women are the best audiences. Guys are too judgy. Well, women can be judgy too, but it's so nice to have a bunch of ladies in the room to help support this great cause, the YWCA, and the things that they do. And that's why we are here tonight. And it doesn't take anyone, we don't need much knowledge of world events to know what violence, what fear, and what desperation can do to people. And we are here tonight to be together and to hear some great messages around we stand for greatness, we stand for kindness, we stand for humility and compassion, and we're going to raise some money to prove that point tonight. So thanks everybody for coming to be a part of it. It is always a pleasure to do this on traditional Blackfoot territory, and we're going to have a meal blessing shortly, but if you promise to chew very quietly, you can start your salads now. So chew quietly. If you have dentures, make sure they're the quiet ones. But I want to do a big introduction. There's some VIPs I want you to meet, but of course I couldn't do a big introduction without introducing one of the reasons we are all here tonight. Following in the footsteps of his parents and elevating their message to the world, our keynote speaker tonight shares the message of equity, nonviolence, and strong advocacy for those who are vulnerable. He is going to be accompanied to his table by YWCA YWCA Committee Chair Rebecca Morley. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to our room Mr. Martin Luther King III. Please be seated. I don't know how many times Martin Luther King III has had a standing ovation before he eats his salad, but it's going to be a great night for us tonight. A couple of other VIPs I want you to know. The MLA from Calgary Fish Creek is joining us tonight, Mr. Richard Godfried. The MLA for Calgary Curry, Greg Clark, is joining us here. And with the City of Calgary, Katie Black are with us. Can we welcome them and thank them so much for coming? And our partner organizations within the community, the Calgary Homeless Foundation, members of the National Committee on the Status of Women and the United Way of Calgary and area are all also represented here tonight. Can we thank them for coming by? I'm going to use this mic because this story makes me nervous, I'm afraid. And I'm afraid because I have a terrible confession to make. Something horrible happened. Something really, well, let me set this up. Okay, so last night I was at a meeting, right? I was here with Rebecca Morley. She's the chair of this whole thing here tonight. And she gives me this piece of paper and she says, Dave, this is the list of the sponsors for tonight. It's on this piece of paper. It's the only place that list exists, this single piece of paper. If you lose this piece of paper before you announce the sponsors tomorrow, you will ruin the entire event, right? So I'm freaking out. I'm thinking, how am I going to do that? So I take the piece of paper and I go home and I'm shaking, but then I get this idea. I fold fold it up, and I put it in my suit pants pocket, the suit I'm wearing tonight, because I think, well, perfect, right? I'll put it in my suit pants pocket. I won't forget. I put it in my garment bag to take to work today, so everything's fine. So I'm sitting at work today, and I'm in rehearsals for the show at Lunchbox Theater. So I'm sitting there, and my phone rings, and I look at the phone, and it says Gary Neeson on the phone, right? And Gary Neeson, one of the great philanthropists in our city. And I look at the phone, and I say, Gary, how you doing? And Gary says, hey, Dave, is it true that you're rehearsing a one-man show for Lunchbox Theater called Epiphany, where you wrote this play, and you play 8 characters in that show? And I said, yeah, Gary, it is. And he says, well, that's interesting to me, because is it true that it opens on November 30th, next Saturday night, and then runs every lunch hour and Thursday and Friday evenings right up until Christmas Eve? I said, yeah, that's true. And he says, is it really true it's about a dad and his daughter learning to get along again after a long time not getting along, and the spirit of Christmas, and a great way to bring my office down there to get into the Christmas spirit? I said, as a matter of fact, it is, right? And then he says to me, Dave, is this phone call a plug for your show or about the sponsors, right? So I hung up on him, right? So I do that, and then I'm sitting there in rehearsal for the show, and I realize I forgot my suit at home. It's at home, and I freak, right? So I run downstairs, and I'm in the plus 15s, and I'm going around the plus 15s where I park my car outside, and I come around the corner, and I smash into this guy from Turmeric. Ends up he's from Turmeric Valley Energy. Who knew? There he is, right? And I run into him, and he falls down, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I said, I'm in a hurry. And he says, I'm in a hurry too. And I say, where are you going? He says, I'm going to BDO. They're helping me with some of my advice. I say, great. I got to go get my car. So I go into my car, and I start it up, and I'm barreling down 4th Avenue, right? I'm maybe going a little too quick, and I'm revving the car, and suddenly the car stops dead. And I look, I ran out of gas. I've never run out of gas before. And I'm on 4th Avenue, and I look around, and there's Birch Cliff Energy, right? So I go to Birch, I open the door, and I run in, and I say, hey, you guys, you're a gas supplier. I need gas for my car. And they say, it's not that kind of gas. I say, I know, and they say, well, sorry, we can't help you. So I run out of there, and I hit a big display of Avenue magazines, right? They're all over the sidewalk, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. And I start to pick them up, and this woman comes up, and she says, don't pick them up. They look like a beautiful mosaic. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she says, I'm Melody from Mosaic Communications, and I think they look so nice right there. And I'm like, yeah, you don't understand. I got a huge problem. She says, what's your problem? I say, I got to get home. She says, why don't you just buy a home from Hopewell Residential, right? And I'm like, I can't do that. And I'm panicking. And I say, no. I need a suit. I need my suit. And she says, well, then why don't you just go to Holt Renfrew? They sell suits. They got men's clothes, women's clothes. They got all kinds of clothes. I'm like, that's not going to help me. I got a huge problem. I got this list of sponsors. It's in my pants pocket. If I don't get home, and I'm freaking, right? And as I'm doing that, this truck pulls up, and it's Agrium and Leslie O'Donoghue's driving the truck. I'm like, what is this all about, right? Agrium, one of the great, it's a company that's based in Calgary, but yet is there helping feed most of the world, this great global company, which is nice. And so then she's there, and her passenger door opens, and my accountant walks out. And I go, Sippy, from Deloitte? And she says, yes, I'm from Deloitte. And I say, what are you doing here? I got this problem. Maybe you can help me. And she says, no, first I got to ask you some tax questions. I'm like, now? I'm in a bit of a hurry. She says to me, no, here's the deal. I need to ask you, have you ever done any investing with Dynasty Power? And I said, like the energy trader? And she said, yeah. And I said, no. And she says, well, what about Crew Energy? I said, no. And then she said, what about Painted Pony Petroleum? I said, no, not them either. I don't do any investing. And she said, well, that's your problem. I'm going to set you up with Forge Group at CIBC Wungundi to help you out. I'm like, okay, that's great, but you know what I need right now? And she says, whatever your problem is, I'm from Deloitte. I can fix it. I said, I need gas. And she hands me a jerry can of gas. I don't know how they do that, but they do. So I fill up my car, and I race home, right? I am late now, and I get in the house, and I run down the hallway, and I pass the bathroom where my wife, Blythe, is giving our daughter a bath. And for bedtime, I run into the room, and I'm pulling on the suit as fast as I can. And Blythe's like, what are you doing here? And I said, I gotta go. And she goes, you're supposed to be at Mercado. I'm like, Mercado? She goes, yeah, you are supposed to meet Anne McCaig and her daughter Jane at Mercado for some great Italian food. I'm like, what are you talking about? I got the Y thing. She goes, I know, but the YWCA thing, you're going to meet them first. And I'm like, oh, I'm really late now. So I run back past, I'm going out the door, and she goes, honey, can you take off my necklace? I don't want it to fall into the tub. So I go over and I undo her necklace. I'm like, wow, this is a beautiful necklace. Where'd you get it? And she said, J. Ver Anderson Jewelers. I'm like, well, that's nice. how did you afford this? And she says, I bank at ATB. Not only are they good people, they've been taking care of me and helped me to see into the future and have money to spend. I'm like, I can't believe that, right? So then I'm like, anyway, I gotta run. So I'm just about to leave the door and my son John comes out with his iPad. He's crying. I'm like, oh, John, what's the matter? And he says, Dad, I'm playing my Lego game online and the network keeps going down. So I'm like, oh, I got friends at Larkspur Inc. They do network stuff. So I phone Larkspur and I say, hey, can you help my son? And they say, don't worry, we just got to do some work with TransCanada Corporation and then we'll be right to your son. I'm like, great, right? So then I leave and I run out the door and I get into my car. Sorry if the camera's trying to follow me, good. So I run out of the door and I get into my car. And I'm in my car, and I'm just about to leave, and there's banging on the window. I'm like, what? And it's my neighbor, Gina. And I roll down the window, and she says, Dave, I think I'm pregnant. You have to take me for an ultrasound. So I'm like, no. And then my wife looks out the window, and she says, honey, we always help our neighbors. I'm like, okay, get in the car. So she gets in the car, and we're driving down the road for an ultrasound. I'm like, I've never actually met your guy. Are you guys ready to have kids? And she says, oh, yeah, we're fine to have kids. It's not a problem, because he works for GMP Securities, so he's doing fine, so we'll be able to afford it, but we're really worried because we want to get married and we don't know how to tell anybody. And I say, oh, okay, well, why not go to Oil City Printing? They're great. They can help you out, right? They'll help you. Yeah. And so they say, okay. She says, good idea. So then we pull up to the ultrasound place, right? Did I tell you the ultrasound place? Well, anyway, so we're at the ultrasound place, which is going to come to me. What's the ultrasound place? Exactly, right? EFW Radiology. So, thank God you guys are on this story with me. So, we race in there, and I say, this woman might be pregnant. She needs an ultrasound. So they wheel her in, or I don't know if they wheeled her. I don't remember. They got her into the room, and then I'm standing outside, and I hear them talking. And Gina says to the lady, she goes, hey, don't I know you from Enbridge, that great energy company that also does so much for arts and culture in our city? And she says, yes, you do. I'm there sometimes. And she goes, hey, isn't your sister an accountant from P. Lucky Professional? And she goes, yeah, that's my sister. Isn't that interesting? And then she says, is that art on your wall ever beautiful? Where did you get that art, right? And they're all talking about this thing, and I'm like, what is going on in there? And it's from the new Zone, exactly. It's from the New Zone Gallery of Contemporary Art, which is incredible. So I stick my head and I'm like, are you ladies going to talk about this the whole time, or is she pregnant? And she goes, oh no, she's not pregnant. We knew that long ago. I'm like, well, thanks so much. I got to run. So I run out the door and I get into my car and I race downtown. Park the car just outside here. And as I get out of the car, I look down and it's Anne McCaig. I totally forgot. So I said, Anne, I'm so sorry. I was supposed to be at Mercado. I totally forgot. Are you still there? And she says, no, Dave, I'm not. I'm at the event, but I wanted to talk to you about boards and compensation and all these sorts of things that I'm having issues with, right? And I say, well, why not just call Huguenot Consulting? That's who I use. And she's like, oh, good idea. Then we don't need to talk. I'm running in just up here, and I hit a patch of ice and land right on my butt, smash down. And I'm like, what is this? This is horrible. They should have specialized desanders do the work and sand this thing, right? And then Jane McCaig looks at me and goes, specialized desanders, that's not the kind of they work in the oil and gas field. I was like, oh, well, how was I supposed to know that, right? I come inside, and I race over to my table, and I sit down, and I look around, and I go, hey, I'm on time. Everything's cool. Everything's cool. And I sit there, and then they say, okay, it's time to come up. And as I'm walking up, I swear, as I'm walking up right here, I'm standing here just relaxing as you guys are there, and I put my hand in my pocket, and my phone vibrates. And I reach back to my phone, and it's a text from my wife. And she says, honey, have a great event tonight. Oh, and your pants were so dirty, I washed them today. But don't worry, they look great. Have a good time. I put the phone away, and I reached into my pocket. This is the list of the sponsors. I wrecked it. I have no idea who the sponsors are. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to skip the whole sponsor thing altogether because I don't know who they are. But let's just give them a hand anyway, even though I didn't know them.